Can a single night really topple an entire kingdom? Do you believe that? Why would Pharaoh, the man who stayed numb through every plague, finally collapse before one last warning? What kind of terror is so absolute that it forces the hardest king to surrender immediately? This isn't only punishment, it's a liberation that shakes the earth. Why is blood on a doorway the only border between life and death? Why must they eat unleavened bread in breathless haste? Stay to the end, because this Passover moment will overturn the destiny of an entire people. The palace of Egypt still rises like a colossal stone in the desert temples, towering idols, and the authority of a king who believes himself untouchable. But behind those walls, the air is drawn tight as a bowstring. The smell of river mud, the smoke of cooking fires, the scent of fear inside the cramped homes of the Israelites, everything mixes into one heavy atmosphere. 9 plagues have already carved through this land, throwing a mighty empire into chaos, then leaving it trembling in an uneasy silence. And within that silence, a decree is prepared like a final blade, ready to strike down Pharaoh's towering pride. Moses stands between 2 worlds. He was raised in the palace, yet his heart was split by the groans of his own people in the mud. In his eyes lives the wound of someone who once tasted freedom, only to watch freedom stolen away. Every time he walks into Pharaoh's presence, he isn't just facing a king. He is confronting the arrogance of an entire system, power that crushes human beings, a cold, familiar answer, no. And now the night wind feels drier, heavier. Moses listens to God and knows this is the final warning. God tells Moses that one last plague will fall upon Egypt, one that will bring Pharaoh to his knees and force him to release Israel. Moses enters the palace where torchlight flickers against gold and stone, and he speaks what must be spoken. His voice doesn't need to roar, every word lands on the cold floor like a verdict. At midnight, disaster will come upon Egypt. The firstborn will die from the poorest house to Pharaoh's own house. Even the firstborn of livestock will not be spared, but Israel will be protected. This is not a threat thrown into the air. It is the final line between obedience and rebellion. Yet Pharaoh remains hard. He is used to command, used to seeing people bow. He refuses to admit there is a power higher than his throne. Moses leaves the palace with a burning ache, as if a small flame of hope has been crushed beneath an iron hand. Then God speaks to Moses and Aaron something new, something that marks time itself for Israel. From now on, this month will be your first month, a beginning, a rebirth. In the middle of slavery, God is not only speaking of judgment, He is speaking of a future, and He gives instructions down to every household. On the 10th day of that month, each family must choose the best one, a male, 1-year-old without blemish. Smaller households are to join with neighbors, life braided to life for the sake of survival on a night that will decide everything. This is not an empty ritual. This is a night of faith and absolute obedience. The lamb is kept for 4 days, as if the entire home is living inside a countdown. The laughter of children, the shuffle of feet, the quiet sighs of mothers, every sound is stretched tight by something they cannot yet see, but can already feel drawing near. On the 14th day, at twilight, they slaughter the lamb. They take their blood and mark their doorframes on both sides, posts, and the lintel above. Inside the small houses, the smell of roasted lamb rises and fills the air, woven with smoke and burning wood. They eat the lamb with bitter herbs and unleavened bread. The bitter herbs are memory made edible. The bitterness of bondage days worked to exhaustion, nights spent on cold floors, tears no one ever bothered to wipe away. The unleavened bread is the taste of urgency. They are about to leave so quickly that there will be no time for the dough to rise. That night, they do not eat like people lingering over a feast. They eat like travelers, ready, alert. Outside, Egypt still tells itself it is secure. Inside, the Israelites sit close together, listening to winds slip through cracks in the door, listening to their own hearts pounding. And on the doorway, the blood shines like a sign, not the mark of fear, but the mark of shelter beneath the word of God. Midnight comes. The sky seems to thicken. The silence is no longer peaceful. It is the stillness before a sentence is carried out. God passes through the land of Egypt. In a single night, the plague strikes. From the homes of the powerful to the homes of the poor, grief erupts like a scream that cannot be held back. Egyptians jolt awake and face the truth they refuse to believe. Wailing rolls from alleyways into wide streets, from mud brick huts to the gates of the palace. It is more than the sound of loss. It is the sound of a nation realizing its power has limits. But amid that storm of sorrow, there are other houses silent. The houses of Israel. The blood on the door becomes a boundary. They hear the crying outside, but inside they hold one another tightly. Fear does not vanish, but it is wrapped in something stronger, the trust that God keeps His word. And then what no one thought would happen, happens. Pharaoh, the unbending one, is broken. In the night, he summons Moses and Aaron, not with the voice of a ruler issuing orders, but with the voice of a man stripped of pride. He says, "Get up, leave my people, take the Israelites and go. Worship the Lord, as you have said. Take your flocks and herds as well, and bless me." The door is open now, not as a distant promise, but an immediate reality. Israel moves in haste. They gather what they can. They ask the Egyptians for silver, gold, and clothing, just as Moses had said, and the Egyptians give it. Not out of affection, but out of terror, desperate for the suffering to stop. That night, families once chained to mud and labor step into the dark like a people reclaiming their name. 600,000 men, along with countless others and their livestock, begin to leave Egypt. And as they go, one truth is carved into history. This night will be called Passover, because God passed over the houses of Israel when judgment fell on Egypt. The bitter herbs will forever remind them of the bitterness they endured. The unleavened bread will forever remind them of the urgency of freedom. And every time they celebrate it, they will not only remember a terrifying night, they will remember the night God delivered them. Moses watches the multitude move through the darkness, hearing the press of footsteps on sand, the cry of children calling for their mothers, the shifting of animals, the long exhale of elders who are finally leaving the place that held them captive for an entire lifetime. This is not merely migration, it is a transformation. From slaves into people being led, from despair into hope, from no way out into the road has opened. But touching freedom is not the same as finding peace. The desert still lies ahead, and Egypt may not be finished letting them go. Passover ends, but Israel's journey has only just begun. In the next episode, you'll see what happens when Pharaoh changes his mind, and the people who have just left Egypt are driven to the edge of the sea, water in front of them, and an army closing in behind. Like and subscribe so you don't miss the next Bible stories.